Chapter 22: Elite Overproduction, Credential Inflation, Status Competition, and the Destabilization of Advanced Societies. Elite overproduction is one of the most powerful, and consistently overlooked, drivers of civilizational decline. It is the condition in which a society produces far more individuals seeking elite roles than elite positions available. When this happens, competition intensifies, status anxiety rises, factions multiply, and institutions become battlegrounds rather than coordinators. Modern societies generate this condition unintentionally through mass higher education, credential inflation, and the symbolic expansion of elite identity, without expanding the real power, authority, or competence required to sustain elite roles. The result is a large cohort of frustrated, underutilized individuals convinced they are entitled to leadership, but blocked from acquiring it. Historically, such cohorts have been the fuel for political radicalism, bureaucratic sabotage, ideological extremism, and institutional instability. To understand elite overproduction, we must clarify what an elite actually is. Historically, elites were small, capability-dense groups, military commanders, literate priesthoods, skilled administrators, merchant dynasties, or land-owning patricians. Entry was selective because capability was scarce and preparation long. Societies calibrated the number of elites to the complexity they could sustain. When elites were few, systems simplified. When elites were strong, systems expanded. Modernity breaks this equilibrium. The massification of higher education, especially the explosion of universities, produced entire generations socialized to expect managerial, professional, or political prominence. Universities expanded far beyond what the labor market or administrative system could absorb. Degrees became symbols of elite aspiration rather than proof of elite capability. Credentialism replaced competence. An enormous surplus of elite identifying individuals emerged, without corresponding elite roles for them to occupy. The mismatch is most visible in societies where managerial, bureaucratic, legal, academic, and policy positions grow far slower than the number of graduates trained to pursue them. Millions obtain degrees signaling elite status, business, law, public policy, social sciences, yet the number of real high-capability positions remains fixed. A surplus forms, status-displaced aspirants who expect leadership but find themselves underemployed, contract-bound, or absorbed into symbolic bureaucratic roles. Their frustration becomes political. This dynamic has appeared repeatedly in history. Pre-revolutionary France produced far more literate, ambitious men than the monarchy could integrate. They became the ideological core of the revolution. Late Qing China produced examination elites faster than bureaucratic roles. Unemployed scholars became reformers, rebels, or revolutionaries. Late Republican Rome produced more aristocratic competitors than Senate positions, fueling factional warfare. In each case, elite overproduction preceded instability. Modern societies have scaled elite overproduction to unprecedented levels. Mass university education now produces millions fluent in elite rhetoric, ideology, and credentialism, yet only a small fraction gain meaningful elite roles. The remainder enter mid-tier bureaucratic niches, advisors, coordinators, analysts, diversity officers, compliance managers, positions heavy on symbolism but light on authority. This produces two outcomes: resentment and ideological zeal. These frustrated elites often become the most aggressive advocates of institutional transformation, not because they are oppressed, but because their expected status was denied. Elite overproduction degrades institutions from within. When credentialism substitutes for capability, elite gateways weaken. Universities lower standards to maintain enrollment. Agencies lower hiring thresholds to meet quotas or staffing shortages. Corporate bureaucracies proliferate managerial roles that generate documentation rather than performance. As elite numbers grow, elite competence declines. Institutions become larger, but less capable. A core consequence is bureaucratic colonization. Surplus elites, unable to access true power positions, seek influence by embedding themselves within mid-level bureaucracies. They create new programs, oversight positions, review panels, audit units, and compliance offices. Each new role requires additional procedures, memos, reporting layers, and training modules. This accelerates sclerosis. Institutions absorb elite aspirants by growing more complex, not more functional. Elite overproduction also destabilizes politics. When too many elites compete for too few roles, factions proliferate. Politics becomes a status tournament rather than a governance structure. Parties radicalize as elite aspirants seek differentiation and purity signals. Institutional conflict intensifies because elites fight each other for position. Consensus becomes impossible, and institutional coherence disintegrates. Media and cultural systems follow the same trajectory. Previously, cultural elites were limited by publication barriers, editorial standards, and institutional gatekeeping. Today, digital platforms create a surplus of individuals seeking cultural influence. Status competition becomes hyper-competitive, producing outrage cycles, ideological extremism, and rhetorical escalation. Cultural elites amplify division because division generates attention, and attention is the new currency of elite competition. Elite overproduction also interacts with capability decline. As demographic and educational deterioration thins the underlying capability base, societies simultaneously credential more people for elite identity. The gap between credential and competence widens. Institutions fill with individuals who believe they are highly capable but cannot perform at elite levels. This mismatch erodes institutional quality while increasing institutional activism. The least capable elites become the most assertive. Public trust collapses as citizens observe institutions staffed by individuals fluent in jargon but incompetent in execution. Administrative systems lose coherence. Infrastructure stagnates. Communication becomes contradictory. Expertise becomes a performance rather than a practice. The public turns to populist challengers not because those challengers are inherently capable but because the official elite class has demonstrated serial failure. In some societies, elite overproduction produces ideological purges. Factions attempt to consolidate power by excluding rivals. Universities become doctrinally rigid. Bureaucracies become ideologically uniform. Media enforces purity standards. These purges reduce cognitive diversity within institutions, making them more fragile. When elites become intellectually homogeneous, blind spots multiply, errors compound, and course correction becomes impossible. In others, elite overproduction produces fragmentation. Rival elite factions capture different institutions, universities, courts, regulatory agencies, municipalities, turning the state into a mosaic of competing micro-regimes. Central coordination collapses. Policy becomes inconsistent. Public experience becomes chaotic. The state loses coherence as an integrated entity. The endgame of elite overproduction is either elite civil war, internal sabotage, factional paralysis, administrative obstruction, or elite replacement, where more capable groups seize control. Historically, replacement has occurred through military coups, insurgencies, populist revolts, external conquest, or technological upheaval. Replacement is often the only path back to capability when the elite class becomes too large, too incompetent, or too factionalized to reform itself. Elite overproduction thus closes the civilizational loop. Declining capability, expanding institutions, demographic contraction, rising administrative load, immigration complexity, bureaucratic sclerosis, institutional fragility, all culminate in an elite class that is too numerous, too incoherent, and too self-interested to manage decline. The system loses governing coherence precisely when it requires it most. In the next chapter, we examine quality deterioration, how declining capability among operators produces visible reductions in service reliability, craftsmanship, professionalism, and institutional execution across modern societies.